So Shelly Gibbs, welcome.
Thank you, Daven.
You are presenting at the Yin Center conference. Your session is a Yin path, communicating with animals.
That's right. I'm happy to be just speaking from my experience over a long period of time. And things in childhood, I think, kind of pointed me in this direction, but I was not conscious of it at the time. So I grew up on a farm, always had animals around just as part of my life. Everything from, the kittens in the haystack to the cattle and sheep. I grew up around a lot of herd animals, which I think is uncommon now for people to experience that dynamic that they have. The animals that we have in our lives now are more similar to us. Cats are obligate carnivores, so they're hunters. Dogs are scavengers, and they have their eyes in the fronts of their heads because they focus on something and they go towards it. Whereas herd animals have eyes on the sides of their heads. They're more aware of a larger field of vision because they're on the lookout for predators. So hence their connection with others.
Yes.
So there's this field of energy that they have together, actually, and this reciprocity, this communication that happens amongst them when they're all together. And that was highly influential for me, even though I didn't know it, because what I learned about was how to use my energy before I even knew what energy was as a child.
Do you feel like that's something you were picking up from being around the animals?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So it had to do with something very physical and grounded, which was directing them, let's say, through a gate or into another pasture, and how much energy that I would need to use in order to cause them to move without scaring them, without having them, get frantic and go in the wrong direction or be confused. So it was a sense of how much of myself to direct towards them versus how much to calm myself and how to read their body language. So I could even tell by their gestures when they were thinking about going in the wrong direction, and then be able to move my body to direct their path where I wanted them to go.
Wow.
So that was as a child, just being exposed to that constantly without, it's in my body now. It's just something that is very instinctive within me. And it started to become more refined when I was actually in my 40s, and I started becoming involved with horses again. I had a pony as a child, and he was like the typical naughty, stubborn pony. I didn't know at the time that there were things that I could have done differently or ways that I could have interacted with him differently. It wasn't until having a horse in my life again in my 40s that I really started to look more closely at energetic interactions between us, because, for example, he was a very muscular horse, very athletic, but I could sense this softness within him. And it was confusing to me because it felt like he was shut down on some level. And so I started to learn things about energy and body work and animal communication to try to connect with him. And so this is say, a quality I feel that is very yin, because my path was circuitous. Like I went in a lot of different directions. It was over a long period of time. It went this way and then another way. And I learned a lot about softness. For example, with Copper, the horse that I'm talking about, I had to learn to keep my body very quiet, because he responded to any kind of surge in my energy, or even if I were to think about doing something, he could sense that and would respond to it. So I started to understand these more subtle layers of things, and had to learn to work with them in a more skillful way. And so, people talk about, if any of the audience listeners have been around horses at all, or let's say just gone on a ride somewhere, in a dude string, it's called. And they, it's kind of like common knowledge that, oh, don't show the horse that you're afraid, because they'll pick up on that. Well, they know you're afraid. If you tried to hide that you're afraid, they know that anyway, because they're sensing your energy. That's how they stay safe in their herd, is by sensing one another, sensing the field of energy around them, and they communicate those things with each other. So it's much better to be authentic and to allow your emotion to arise and be with it, and acknowledge it, and then allow the reciprocity and the relationship with the animal.
Oh my God.
So,
I mean, so much of what you're saying, it is so about the yin.
yes.
And, and to say the feminine, the feminine, and that I'm feeling from where you started about describing the difference between a predator animal and a herd animal. And I really got, the eyes are on the side of the head. They're scanning literally the field. We use the word the field to talk about the energetic field of a place. They're actually in a field.
Yes, that's right.
Or in a space. And that each member of that herd is doing the same thing. So they're creating this field of knowing, this field of tracking, this field of awareness amongst each other. And it is this diffuse, it's spread throughout the whole herd.
Yes.
Very different from, the lion who's on the edge of the field, not looking for horses, but looking for gazelles or whatever. It's two very different archetypes of energy.
Yes.
And we also have we're the predator as well as the herd. I mean, we're social animals.
Yes.
And as women, we tend to be the ones that have the innate, that diffuse multitasking, tracking the family, tracking all the children, tracking all the members in the community, what's going on. It's really, I can really feel it from what you're saying.
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels. It's very interesting. And also, we're more in tune with our emotions. We're more emotional, and horses are the same. If you want to work with them in a way that is not stressful, you need to always be aware of their emotions, because you don't want to, if you're interacting with them and you're asking them to do something, you don't want to cause fear, because they're a flight animal. Their first response is to run away. That's how they stay safe. So you want to present something to them in a way that doesn't frighten them. In other words, it doesn't go over their threshold. So there's a tuning into the very subtle cues of body language and energy also. If I were to interact, let's say, with my horses when they were just loose, I could sense something that they were frightened of at the same time that they sensed it. It's like it would come to my belly. I could feel it in my belly as like a sharpness. And so there's this instant communication energetically.
Wow.
And they've just been very profound beings in my life and have taught me so much, guided me on this path. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you, coming around to your conference session, and you do work as an animal communicator, and you are working a lot with people's pets. They're
Right.
little household predators. And all kinds of animals. And so I wonder if you could say, I'm curious to know more about what people will experience in your session, what you hope they will experience and take away. And I'm also wondering if you can tie in a little bit what you're describing with horses and herd animals to what people can experience or can tune into with their household pets that may not be herd animals. So there's a few questions I'm throwing out. You can pick which one.
Okay. Well, I think the thing that is unifying in all of this is that there's a need for quietness. There's a need for settling. There's a need for being present in your body in order to allow things to come. And so that's across the board. So even if people don't have a herd of sheep in their backyard and they have their beloved cat or dog, it's the same principle of becoming very quiet and receptive. And there's an openness, an energetic openness that comes when you drop down out of your thinking mind and into a more still place. So information comes into that quiet spaciousness that you create in some different ways. For me, it comes as pictures or sometimes words, just a few words. So that's how the information comes to me when I'm working with someone's animal. That's how the information could potentially come to someone else who wants to just experience what it might be like to sit quietly with their animal and just trust something that comes to them. It could be a feeling. We can use all of our senses skillfully. There are some that are more, let's say, honed or easier for different people. Some people might have a better feeling sort of receptivity. Some people might be more visually oriented, like I am. I noticed a lot of details about an animal. That's why it's hard for me to pick up things when I'm actually present with them, because I'm noticing their cuteness and the little tufts on their ears or the beautiful eyebrows or something. I'm very visually oriented.
So you're working, and so your work is remote when you tune in to them, just to be clear. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, correct. But there are still ways for people to experience connection, through practicing being quiet. And
when you were describing coming into the space of the horses and their sensitivity, I felt that it was, my sense was, oh, you have to create space, you have to create the receptive for them to come in, as opposed to that energy, and then
yes,
then from there there's the most subtle expression of, okay, we're going over here, or this is what I want you to do, but that the first step is the space, creating the space and the invitation. And does that make, and there's an incredible, well, for me, who's very outgoing, there's an incredible restraint of energy.
yes, right. So that is fine tuning.
Mhm.
It depends on the animal. So let's say with my horse Copper, who's very sensitive, if you were to come towards him with that kind of energy that felt really big
Mhm.
or felt a little powerful or had a pushing quality to it, he would probably walk away.
Mm.
So there's just like a presence with your own field
Mm.
and being soft with that. So it feels like there's some fluidity or there's some permeability to it or receptivity. And you approach with that kind of energetic quality. And then you ask permission.
Mm.
So that's also a place of softness,
Mm.
because they might not want you coming into their space at that moment. That could be the same with someone's cat. You don't just go and pick up the cat.
Mhm.
That's going to upset them. There's a place of asking permission. There's a place of sensing and feeling.
Mm.
So yeah, depending on the sensitivity of the animal or their personality as well, they're all different. Let's say a dog who's very gregarious and happy and maybe younger, or a puppy,
Mhm.
they're going to have a different quality to their energy. So you could come up to them and dogs have their body language of how they drop down and they'll do
Yeah.
a play bow. If you have some of that kind of quality to let's play, they're going to respond to that. If you did that to an older dog who's maybe a little stiff and not feeling good,
Mm.
that's not going to go over so well. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? So
Totally. And I'm really thinking how the title of your session is so perfect, because this is such an entry point into the yin, what you're describing. And so for people who feel very connected with animals, well, first of all, they're probably already on this path, but
right.
to understand it as the yin, and then how you can experience it in this arena, and then understand how it works in other aspects of your life as well.
Very true.
Very powerful, that this is like a beautiful entry point
Yes.
for the yin, which is why I'm so glad you're part of this conference.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's bringing in such an important piece. And as we come to the end of our time already, is there anything else you want to say about what you would love people to experience from your session? What you'd love for them to take away?
I would just love for them to feel warmth, and that they have the ability to connect with nature, with themselves, with animals, and that there's a way that you can cultivate this and to practice it in just simple ways in your daily life. Even something like you're walking somewhere and you hear the birds, and just stopping to appreciate them and tell them how beautiful they are, and just receive their song.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shelly Gibbs, your session is a yin path, communicating with animals. It's part of the Yin Center Inaugural Conference, April 1st through 3rd. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Okay.